And we now turn to 2016 and to the impact of the first debate of the primary season. Days after the GOP candidates met in Cleveland, most of the attention is still going to businessman and reality TV star Donald Trump, but at what cost to the party, with minority and women voters? And can he continue his forward momentum? Let's get to it with Reed Dickens, one of our favorite guests, former White House press secretary under President George W. Bush. He is also the founder of the Dickens Capital Group and co-founder of Marucci Sports. I love that company, by the way. Okay, Reed, in the aftermath of the debate, what's your quick analysis?
First of all, it's great television. I think it's representing a typical protest vibe that early primaries typically have, and I think there's almost zero correlation to the outcome. I think if there were if what's going on right now in a primary mattered, you'd have a President Dean preceding a President, Rudy Giuliani. So I think this is really good television, but that's about it.
Trump. I don't have to ask anything. Trump.
I think he's being exposed for what he is. He's a phenomenal promoter who has questionable character, zero policy depth, and I think will ultimately prove to have no interest in actually governing. I think he enjoys campaigning a lot more than governing, but the real danger for Republicans is if they don't manage him properly, he could run as a third party and devastate the GOP like Ross Perot did in '92.
How do you manage him?
Carefully. I don't have a good answer to that, but I think he's very thin-skinned. I think Megyn Kelly found that out. He's very thin-skinned, and I think if they don't handle the process properly with the conversations behind closed doors, he'll run as an independent, and it would crush the Republican Party.
Fox News is, some think, an adjunct of the Republican Party in a sense. Do they take on Trump now? Do the O'Reillys and the Hannitys go after Trump?
Well, let's not forget Roger Ailes is very good at what he does. Trump picked a fight with the wrong folks. They're really good at this. They're trying to create good television. It's all about ratings, and Trump is a match made in heaven for them because he's all about attention. Keep in mind, MSNBC is an extension of the Democratic Party. Fox is kind of an extension of the Republican Party. But when it comes to creating good ratings, Fox is the king. And so I think Trump has kind of met his match. And listen, the fight he picked with Megyn Kelly, I think is just exposing him for who he is, which is he's never seen a publicity frenzy that he didn't want to be a part of.
Do you fear his going all the way?
Going all the way is a function of having money, and even if he only has a quarter of the money he says he has the money to go all the way.
Right, correct. The other 9, how'd they do?
So I look at it like the first day of a major in the PGA golf major. You can't. Tiger Woods always says you can't win on Thursday, but you can lose. I think most of them shot even par. I think Rubio performed really well. I think he's showing himself to be very politically savvy. I heard someone say yesterday he might be the most politically talented of the group, and I think I agree with that. Governor Kasich had a very low bar, and he was the host, but I still think he performed above expectations. The only person I think did any damage to himself other than Trump would be Senator Paul. I think he looked reactive, angry. He kind of looked like a political amateur the way he handled the situation.
How about Jeb?
So Governor Bush, I think the knock on Governor Jeb Bush is that he didn't have the gravitas, as you and I discussed. He didn't have the gravitas. He didn't step up and attack anyone. But I think each candidate on that stage had their own set of objectives. And I think Governor Bush's objectives were to behave like a grown-up in the midst of a clown show. And I think from his perspective, he behaved like a grown-up, and he's trying to wait it out until the discussion gets much more substantive.
In the earlier debate called the Child's Table,
right,
did Carly Fiorina stand out?
Well, I don't think there's any question she stood out. I mean, she was the talk pretty much on both sides, Democrat and Republican. She got all the buzz, and I think rightfully so. She was decisive, clear. She had a message. A lot of times these guys are out there to kind of promote themselves, but they don't have a clear message. Carly had a clear message. I thought she performed well. I think she put herself in a position to be a legitimate candidate for vice president.
With the stance on abortion and other things, is the Republican Party declaring a war on women?
Well, they better hope not. Women, as Governor Haley Barbour used to always say, women control 53% of the vote and 75% of the money and spending in the United States, and so they better not be declaring a war. I don't think Republicans are in a good position right now, obviously. It's a tough position to be in with policy. I mean, Governor Rubio on Meet the Press Sunday, I thought he was really articulate addressing the fact that there's a lot of science showing that in conception there's a human life and that women also have a right to protect their bodies, and that's a very difficult conversation.
But the age-old argument.
It's a very difficult conversation, and I think Republicans are on a difficult side of that conversation with Hillary Clinton.
Joe Biden, in or out?
I think he'd be crazy not to run.
Really?
Well, because, you know, it's like Al Gore in 2000. When you have Air Force Two and you kind of have government platform to run from, to run on a government platform, campaigning on Air Force Two is a real advantage. I don't think he would be a real threat to Hillary, but I think he'd be a legitimate candidate. He's been vice president for 8 years, and so I think he'd be crazy not to run. What else is he going to do? Right.
What does Obama do in that case? Does he get involved in the primary or stay out?
I doubt he would get involved. I think he would take the path that most sitting presidents take, which is that I'm not going to get involved in the primary.
Is Hillary Clinton in trouble legally?
I don't know the answer to that. What I would say is these conversations are always clouded. It's hard to separate the coffee and the cream. These conversations are clouded with politics and legalities. What I do know is that there were probably some really sloppy mistakes made. And so if there's anything that can feed into the longer narrative on Hillary, and I'm talking about 18 months from now, or 15 months from now. If there's anything that plays into the broader narrative, it's this question of integrity and sloppiness. But I don't think she's going to end up doing a perp walk.
Ferguson's a year old. Race going to play an issue in 2016?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at 2015, I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he was saying that people will probably be writing doctoral thesis on the year 2015. You have the transgender in the military. You have Ferguson. You have a Republican, conservative Chief Justice upholding gay marriage. I mean, this is a kind of a cultural revolution. So I think race will absolutely be in the backdrop. I think when it comes down to the final 60 days in the election, elections will always be about keeping America safe and growing the economy. But in the backdrop, you've got these things like minimum wage and women's rights and race. Those are always undercurrents.
Do you think we might see a black or a woman on the Republican ticket?
I think there's as much, kind of as good of a chance as there's ever been. So you have Governor Nikki Haley, who's a superstar, and I think she solidified her star power with the way she handled taking down the, her recommendation on the flag. I think then you've got Carly. So you've got some. I don't see a pathway to an African American being on the ticket because I don't think we have a candidate that has a real shot. I don't think he has I don't think he's a viable candidate.
Democrats have announced 6 presidential primary debates. Fox is not going to get one of them. Mistake?
It depends on whether you subscribe to Clintonian strategy or Rovism, and I'm making those words up. There's one school of thought that says you've got a third Republicans and a third Democrats and kind of this third in the middle, and you have to triangulate them and go after the middle. And if that's the case, Fox has a lot more viewers than MSNBC and has a lot of middle America, kind of the flyover states, watch Fox every day. So I think that would be unwise. If you're subscribing to what I would call Rovism, which is that you've got 49, 49, and then just the few undecideds in the middle, then you really do whatever you can to rile up your base, right? So I think that's a decision that the Democratic leaders have to make.
Someone said this whole election, with the Electoral College the way it is, if you're voting in California, your vote don't count. And if you're voting in Utah, your vote don't count. Your vote counts in Ohio. Does Ohio elect the president?
So I believe it'll probably ultimately come down to a couple counties in Ohio. But I don't believe it's as cynical as a lot of people make it sound, because if you look back, and I like to remind people of this, Governor Romney got only 15, 16%, somewhere in there, of the Hispanic vote. George W. Bush got 44%. Had Mitt Romney even gotten half of that difference, split the difference, he probably would have won Colorado and several other states. There were a whole handful of states, 5 or 6 key states, that were decided by less than 1%. So as much as everyone likes to talk about Ohio, and I agree, Ohio is going to be crucial, there's a handful of states that if you have a Marco Rubio or a Jeb Bush speaking fluent Spanish, that come into play.
The purple states.
The purple states. I think there really are more purple states this election.
Will this be you often said the best race would be Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush, because it would be issue-driven.
Yeah, I still
stand by that?
I still believe that, and here's why. I think if you look at they've both been exposed to the presidency for 2 decades. They're both they're most experienced in terms of presidential decision making. They're both extremely substantive on policy, and they both have 100% name recognition and a 50-state platform already in place. So you have big political machines, big policy ideas, big philosophic chasm between the two of them. I think it would be very substantive. I think if you turned all of your electronics off and went into the Sahara Desert for a year, I think what you'll find is when this clown show's over, Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush debating really big ideas about the power of the federal government and things of that nature.
Chuck Schumer leaving Obama on the Iran deal. What do you make of that?
Wow. I mean, it's a complicated deal. Senator McClaskill said on Meet the Press yesterday, and I thought this was interesting. She said, I'm not listening to President Obama. And she said, I'm not listening to Chuck Schumer. She said, I'm doing what any senator should be doing, which is reading through the bill and deciding who's going to have control of this 160, the numbers vary, but anywhere from 60 to $100 billion Iran is allegedly getting. And she said, who has the control levers over that money plays a big part. So I think if senators are doing their job, they're going to block out the noise. Will they do that? I don't know. I think President Obama did what he's supposed to do. He made a case for what he thought was the best deal possible, and President Obama got the endorsement of Secretary Bob Gates, a former George W. Bush appointee, who said that this is a terrible deal. It was poorly negotiated, but not getting a deal done would have been worse. So I think President Obama is making the case for the deal he got.
Thank you, Reed. It's always great having you. We'll have you on
my pleasure.
frequently.
It's been fun.